everybody. First of all, thank you all for being here and also watching our entertainment and our event here in New York through the Hangout session. We are the SDSN Amazonia plus SDSN Youth, and this activity is part of the International Conference on Sustainable Development. Thank you. We are here to talk about this afternoon about engagement of people, especially the youth, within the region, within the SDGs, and also how this mechanism of engagement and have all these people together can work for the region. And we have here two goals, which are increase the awareness and engagement of these people, and also how to mobilize and in a collaborative way experiences and also people. And Sam is about to join us. Great. Okay, and these activities has been broadcasted to different countries from the Amazon Basin, Colombia, Peru, and Brazil. And here in the USA, we are broadcasting from New York City, from Columbia University. And in total, we have 27 hubs. The idea here is basically also to reduce costs and carbon emission and make it accessible and make this event and also this topic available to remote people, to people that are actually in Amazon, in remote areas that cannot be here in New York with us and cannot be more involved on that in person, but virtually they are. And then to be here with us, we will have Professor Vigilio Viana, who is chair of the SDSN Amazonia and also co-chair of the Global SDSN, and director general from the Amazonas Sustainable Foundation, which is located in Manaus. And plus to give a speech and to give us a word about these topics, we will have Siamak Semloni from the SDSN Youth. We'll have Dominique Mengot, also from SDSN Youth. We will have Tessa Ferraz from Engajamundo, it's an NGO from Brazil. And also we'll have Rachel Ellen Legiden, did I right? Yeah, from the Children's International Summer Village, CISV International. And then now I pass the word for Professor Vigilio to address here some inspirational words for us.
Okay. Hello, good afternoon, everybody. It's great being with you. We just finished a very, very interesting morning session of this Amazon Day. I'm not sure how many of you had a chance to participate, but we had people from Peru, from Colombia, and from Brazil, all participating through the web. So it was a web-based conference, and we had 9 very senior representatives of academia, of business, of NGOs, and civil society. And it was very interesting to see them all saying that it's very important to engaging youth in this agenda, and that education is essential and communication is essential. So just like to make the connection between that discussion we had in the morning and the discussion we're going to have this afternoon. And I think the simple question is how to promote more engagement. And my hypothesis is that in order to promote engagement, we have to do a couple of things. One is to identify a sense of purpose. What am I engaging for? And here comes, I think, science. Science tells us that we have this urgent need to change business as usual worldwide. But we have a very specific one for the Amazon, because we are at a point which is very close to what science is calling the tipping point. In other words, the point beyond which there is no return to ecosystem collapse. ecosystem failure, because in a quick summary, forests play a very important role in rainfall regimes. So as forests are cut, then rainfall patterns change. As rainfall changes, then dry seasons become longer, and there are more forest fires, and the more forest fires there are, the less water is produced by forests, and this is sort of a snowball effect. So there is that regional urgency, in addition to the global urgency of changing business as usual. So that is the purpose, to engage youth. And my question to you, who are experts on engaging youth, there is even Engajamundo, which is engage the world, that's what it stands for, how to make that happen. And not only we had these senior people saying this, but also we had a number of participants in the morning who were from the Federal University of Amazonas, from the State University of Amazonas, and from Sinchi and others, lots of students saying, well, how can we mobilize? So, and I think there is a need for that. And just to finalize my point here, I think I sense that there is a demand for engagement. And the reason why I say this is because we organized not too long ago, a couple of months ago, something called the Sustainable Development Weekend. In Portuguese, stands for Virada Sustentável. And we had 700 volunteers signing up, and 33 organizations working together to put an agenda which included 274 events. So that, I think, is an expression of how much interest there is in youth in engaging. And all we need to do is to provide a platform for that to happen. And to engage in changing business as usual is not easy, but I think it's something that it's going to only happen if we have a tactic which includes several fronts. We have to engage in demonstrations, sort of street demonstrations, on one hand, because that's part of changing politics and changing policies. We have to engage in changing university curricula, because it's outdated. So I think it's very important to have engagement for that, to change the way universities are providing education. And it's very important to engage in practical solutions, design and implementation. So that is what I'd like to share with you, and I'm very interested in hearing your thoughts and your ideas on this very challenging agenda. Thank you.
Great, Professor Vigilio. Thank you for the challenge that we have here to discuss in this afternoon. And then to start it, I invite Sam, which is from the SDSN Youth. He's the global coordinator of it, and is an executive member of the SDSN Australia Pacific Regional Center, which is located in Monash Sustainable Development Institute. So Sam, if you could address the keywords we have here and also the challenge of Professor Vigilio, you're welcome to start.
I'm not very good with technology. Okay. Thank you very much, Gabriela, for inviting me to this brilliant conference. Can I just say I really want to commend you and SDSN Amazonia and SDSN Youth in Amazonia for this wonderful effort, because I absolutely love the idea of a digital international conference, and to cut carbon emissions, to connect to a much bigger crowd, and to be able to engage through new platforms. And it's much more effective, much more efficient. And, of course, it's perhaps in some cases not as powerful as in-person meetings, but it's still, I think, heading in the right direction, and we should be using these technologies. And it's great to see STS and Amazonia doing this. And I mean, I really think youth organizations around the world should be learning from you guys more on this front. And with that, I would like to invite all the participants around the Amazon Basin region that are listening, and I want to welcome you all to the Anthropocene. Now, it is possible that some of you haven't heard of that, but welcome to it. Anthropocene is otherwise known as the Age of Humans. Welcome to the Age of Humans. The age where we have changed the geological structure of the planet so significantly that we are in a new epoch. We move more sediments and sand than all the riverways and all the waterways combined in a year. So you can imagine the impact we're having on this planet. And we've been here for 1% of this planet's history, for less than 1% of this planet's history. And despite that, look at the damage that we've done here. So this is why it's called the Age of Humans. And on top of that, just to add to the brilliant work that we've been doing in the past few centuries, is the sixth mass extinction. We're in the middle of the sixth mass extinction. So you can imagine, not only are we destroying the planet, but also the species on this planet. The last time we had a mass extinction was when the dinosaurs were wiped out. And thanks to us, we're starting a whole other process around it. And it's very scary for me. And you can imagine, currently the world population sits at 7 billion, 7.2 I think is the latest. And by 2050, it's projected to be around 9, possibly 10 billion. Most of this population growth will be happening in the developing world. About 1 billion of that will be happening incredibly quickly in the African continent, where most of the people there will be aspiring to Western standards of living. And it's a very interesting figure. If every person on the planet were to live like the way people live in the West, then the planet could only sustain about 1 billion people. So you can imagine the pressure that will put on the planet if the population grows so rapidly. But we want to do that in a sustainable way. And that's the whole argument. Now, we had the MDGs, the Millennium Development Goals, which passed and came into effect in 2002. The Millennium Declaration was in the year 2000, but the Millennium Development Goals came into effect from 2002. We started a bit late, and it was considered the biggest, this is a quote from UN Development Program, UNDP, that it was the biggest anti-poverty movement in history. So, and that's true. It did help move a lot of things, but it didn't address some core components that we're facing now. It was an old agenda, but now we're looking at a new agenda, and there were lots of gaps. Firstly, conflict. The Millennium Development Goals did not address conflict. And if you look at a place like Syria, you'll see that Syria had almost achieved all the MDGs, all the Millennium Development Goals over the past 15 or so years. In the space of 4 years, all of its progress was completely reversed as a result of a conflict. Now, that progress, which was reversed, was incredibly devastating. I mean, it's got roughly 10 million people in displacement. 4 out of 5 people now in Syria live in poverty. 80% of the population plunged into poverty after the conflict. Access to water, healthcare, these several. And in terms of the economic damage, it's roughly around $200 billion. So you can imagine the damage a conflict has done. So to those who say that conflict and development aren't linked, they don't obviously understand the linkages. So the Millennium Development Goals did not address this. So it was very important for us to be able to be looking at conflict and peace as a precondition for sustainable development, for peaceful societies, and for prosperous societies. It's as simple as that. And then on top of that, we have what the MDGs didn't address was the issue of inequality. I mean, inequality has been rising just amongst nations and within nations, which is a massive problem. I mean, if you look at the new, some of the new theses by Joseph Stiglitz, Professor Jeffrey Sachs, and Thomas Piketty, you will see that inequality is not just a moral issue, but also a long-term development issue. It can lead to financial crises and a whole bunch of other social factors that can actually be a challenge for development. Simple as that. But one fact I think came across, it was a research done by Oxfam. I think some of you may or may not have heard of it, which was, I think it was 30 individuals, 30 of the richest individuals on the planet own as much wealth as a bottom 3.5 billion people. 30 people and the bottom 3.5. Just compare those numbers. They're astronomical. I mean, apart from the moral fact, it's just the gap is massive. If we want to develop, especially in a sustainable way, we must address the issue of inequality, wealth inequality, wage inequality, and of course, gender inequality. So these are all really important. The third one is that we still have more than 1 billion people who live on less than $1.25 a day. That's extreme poverty. I mean, relative poverty and all that, that's still massive, but extreme poverty. So that's another area that we need to work on. And finally, the issue of planetary boundaries. The MDGs, to some degree, made reference to the environment, but it did not try to look at it as a underlying component of an entire development agenda. It wasn't sustainable development. It was just, conservation and a few other things. But what we must understand that we have planetary boundaries. And Professor Johan Rockström, who wrote the thesis on planetary boundaries, who was also a colleague of ours, and he's on the leadership council of the SDSN, he continuously makes reference to these points that the planet has boundaries. And if we fall over those boundaries, if we cross those thresholds, then we are in uncharted waters. And there are four, what they're called, I think Virgilio referred to, is the four there are actually six, but there are several tipping points. And these tipping points means that after we cross the threshold, we don't actually know what's going to happen. Like, we have some ideas, we have some expertise, but we won't know what's going to happen. We don't know what the impact's going to be. It's unpredictable. We don't know where we're going to be. It is a quite scary concept. And what's even scarier is like most of these we don't really know when they're going to happen. And that includes the thermohelon oscillation, the Antarctic summer sea, the Arctic summer sea ice, the West Antarctic ice sheet, and of course the Amazon rainforest. The Amazon rainforest is equivalent of the lungs of the planet. The planet breathes through that rainforest. If we are to destroy it, if we're not to conserve it, if we're not to look after it, again, that is a tipping point. And I encourage everyone who is interested to read the Planetary Boundaries thesis, and it explains all these issues. So we need to look at this. And also one other thing is that there's lots of theses coming out currently that some of the modern conflicts, specifically in the past 10 years, have been in part triggered by impacts of climate change. It's not 100% conclusive, but the IPCC referred to the fact that some of it has had an impact. And this includes Darfur and also most recently in Syria. So imagine climate change is already having an impact on these conflicts. So I've painted a very dark picture here, but there is hope. And when in September last year, 193 governments came together at the UN to adopt the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals. And when before this, I mean, every time you mention sustainability, this includes myself. When I used to hear sustainability in high school, and I used to think, you know, I used to associate it with tree hugging and the environment alone and loving, you know, the nature and all that. You know, these very backwards and very wrong concepts and views of sustainable development. But sustainable development is actually just a comprehensive approach to society, to politics, to economics, and to the environment. And it's about making sure that we transform as a society in the right way. It's not just about the environment, but the environment is a major component of that. And we need to understand that. So when these 193 countries came together and adopted the SDGs, the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and by the way, I hear it all the time. I see it in draft texts from different organizations in the news, and they keep calling it the UN SDGs, almost giving this impression that it was, you know, it was a set of goals designed by the UN, and you know, the UN sent a directive to member states and said, you got to achieve this. That's not how it worked. The UN just was a facilitator. These are the SDGs that are part of the country's agendas. Every single country negotiated. It was some of the toughest negotiations. There were millions of people who voted around the world. There were consultations at UN offices all around the world. There were consultations through basically all the major civil societies, through businesses. I mean, everyone really tried to have a voice. I mean, of course, not everyone, but many stakeholders had a voice. So we should stop calling it the UN Sustainable Development Goals. They are just the Sustainable Development Goals. And of course, there is to make matters worse, some people call it the United Nations Global Goals. I mean, what does that even mean? It doesn't give any context. It doesn't really have any meaning. So I would encourage everyone to use the Sustainable Development Goals and the SDGs to describe this, because it's very important. And so these member states came together and they adopted, and it was a great, and we know at the UN people don't ever agree on anything. But people came together for these goals because they said they had this agreement that issues such as poverty, climate change, planetary boundaries go beyond politics. They go beyond politics. These are for the future of our societies. And then later, by the momentum caused from that summit, for the SDG summit in September 2015, it led to the Paris Agreement. I mean, that was brilliant. 2 major agreements in 1 year. And they were really important for the planet and the future of us. Now, I was there at the SDG summit, and it was absolutely brilliant. Malala was there and was speaking to the General Assembly. Pope Francis was there behind the agenda, supporting it very, very strongly. And in fact, after Pope Francis spoke, it was the turn of so Pope Francis spoke and left, and then Shakira performed and danced. And then once she'd finished, the diplomats all started moving around, and Malala came to speak from the podium, which we were standing next to her, and she was speaking. And as she was speaking, world leaders were walking around and not caring and just talking to each other. One person was there, they were networking, and Malala speaking. I don't know if you've ever tried to speak to a crowd and everyone's just moving around, nobody's listening. I think it's a very rude, and it just shows a lot of disrespect. And while she was speaking, they were doing that, and it was shocking to me. She was representing youth at this event where, I mean, they said youth engagement was going to be so important, and yet everyone was doing that. So she did something very brave, which I actually really loved, which was she just went from this humble young lady to a strong woman and just said, will you stop moving around and listen? The next generation up here is trying to speak to you. Listen and be accountable to these guys. These guys are part of this agenda. Listen to, and people started actually turning around listening. And this shows that young people should be persistent. shouldn't just bow your head and say, well, you know, nobody listens to me. You should be persistent like Malala. And I mean, the conference was great. Hearing Pope Francis was fantastic, but my favorite moment was when she did that. That gave me energy. And whenever I go, I do recite that story for that very particular reason. Now, this brings me to the work of young people. If you look, if you wanted to describe the SDGs in 3 ways, you would have to argue that they are incredibly ambitious. If you look at the goals on inequality, if you actually read the text and the references that are made within that text, you will see that it is a very ambitious agenda. And that's brilliant. We need that. Second one is very people-centric. I mean, the actual slogan for the SDGs is leave no one behind. And thirdly, which is in the title of the goals, is they're supposed to be transformative. Now, for those very reasons, for those 3 qualities, I think young people could be the key to leading the process and achieving them. Because there are certain qualities that young people have which fit in really well with the agenda, the 2030 agenda and the SDGs. Firstly, we talked about ambition, the ambitious nature of the SDGs. We know that young people are much more optimistic than their older counterparts and much more idealist. And that leads to ambition. And we need that. We need that optimism. And we need that idealism. Secondly, half the world's population is under the age of 30. So that's roughly 3.5 billion young people on this planet. When you look at those figures, you realize that if it's a people's agenda, if people are going to be key to achieving it, and if the motto is leave no one behind, then those 3.5 billion, which is a bulk of the population, are going to be pretty critical as a demographic. So you want young people to take ownership to make this happen. And lastly, which I think is probably the most important, is I hear at conferences at the UN and elsewhere all the time, transformation, it's transformative agenda. Let's transform. I mean, it's become a buzzword. But I think a lot of people don't actually realize that when we say a transformation, if you look at the agenda, it is truly revolutionary. And to do that, we're going to need a completely new way of looking at solving the problems that the SDGs are aiming to fix. And to do that, we're going to need new thinking. I always say this quote, Einstein said, you cannot fix problems with the same thinking that started them. And young people are critical to this process because they are by nature creative. And this is not just me saying it. There are loads of scientific studies on the creative capacities of young people and their ability to think outside the box. It's actually called functional fixedness. It's a neurological process in the brain. So I think if we want to really transform societies, we're going to need the creativity of young people to think outside the box and come up with new solutions to these development challenges. And to link that in an intergenerational effort with the expertise, experience, power, and influence of older generations. That's when we will ensure that no one is left behind. That's when we will transform our societies and move towards a sustainable future. Otherwise, in 15 years, if we continue on the same path and keep doing the same thing and fail to engage young people, we're going to end up, at 2030 and another summit and say, well, we did some good things, we did some bad things. We don't have options. We don't have the luxury of time for that second thing. We get one chance at this. We really do. I mean, some of the colleagues here were there when James Hansen was speaking to the SDSN Leadership Council. I mean, James Hansen is considered the world leading scientist on climate change and climate science. And the scenario he was painting was just scary. So we get one chance at this, and we must take it. And finally, there was this survey done by the UN and ISEC International, where they surveyed, I think it was 50,000 or 60,000 young people from 100 different countries, and they asked them, what kind of jobs would you like for your future? Almost all of them highlighted 3 kinds of jobs. A job that is challenging, that is global, and that's meaningful. Now tell me, could those not also be qualities that can be applied to the SDGs? Challenging, global, and meaningful. So you can see why young people align really well with this agenda. And there's no point just bringing them to the table if you're not going to listen to them, if you're not actually going to tap into their creative capacities and give them budgets and influence and really let them take ownership of this agenda and really transform this. Take that energy, take it out. What some of the millennial groups did with the climate movement was absolutely brilliant. They took it beyond politics. It's now beyond contest in many cases because of the efforts of young people in doing that, in pushing that. Let's do this together. And I just want to wrap up, because I've been speaking for a while. I want to give the others the opportunity as well. Is Virgilio mentioned demonstrations and activists. I think that's very important. It's not all about the UN and coming here and negotiating and all that. I think young people are doing fantastic work as it is. We need to just support them. We need to give them mentorship, expertise, access to finance, and let them do it. Bring them into the conversations. Again, not just to have them sit there, but to listen to what they say and work out ways to work together as partners. And and the example I think James Hansen mentioned as well is a group of young indigenous Latin Americans who are suing the US government for inaction on climate change. They're young activists. I think there are 20 of them, and they're brilliant, and I love their work. So these are examples of some of the great things that young people are doing and will be doing. And finally, to wrap up again, a huge thank you to SDSN Amazonia for inviting me. It's an absolute pleasure being able to speak here, and I hope that we can learn more from the great work that SDSN Amazonia and FAST and SDSN Youth in Amazonia are doing, and from young people across the Amazon basin in Latin America. And yeah, with that, I conclude my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Sam. I think it was a very inspirational word for all of us about the importance of that youth has nowadays and currently, and sometimes we are not evaluated, and it's very important to bring together and try to do it like in a conjoined agenda, not only like SDSN, but also another institutions that can work together to accomplish the SDGs within the youthness. Thank you. And then from SDSN to SDSN, I'd like to invite Dominique to speak for us a little bit, maybe about the solutions and the work that she's been doing in the SDSN, and also to address the questions that we had here. And just to wrap up about Dominique, she's a project officer with the Solutions Initiative at the SDSN Youth, and she's also an environmental lawyer specializing in climate change and biodiversity conservation. Okay.
thank you for having me here today. I'm a project officer with the solutions team at SDSN Youth. And so one of the new initiatives we're launching this year is our Youth Solutions Report, which is focusing on, we want to showcase 50 projects done by young people around the world with the emphasis on the SDGs. And a lot of them are ranging, the ones that we've been getting so far are, some of them are nonprofits, some of them are more entrepreneurial. And the whole idea behind it is to showcase what the work that's actually being done by young people, that we're not, just sitting on the sidelines, or we're actually taking an active part in personalizing the goals and working in many different areas. A lot of the projects are also highlighting the hybrid connectivity of the goals. They're not just focused on one area, they're addressing so many different things. So at the moment, I really do encourage everyone to visit our website. It's youthsolutions.report, and you can see some of the guidelines for some of the projects we're interested in, and looking forward to showcase when we launch the report at COP22 this year in November. And yeah, so the whole idea as well, by encouraging and showcasing a lot of these sort of projects, is the need to also connect young people with others and experts that will get those projects to the next level. There's a lot of emphasis between institutions, such as schools and universities, and bringing that expertise, because you might have an idea, but to get your project then to the next level, you need to build on the experience of the past. I had a professor that once said, "Yo, I get older every year, but the students, they stay the same." So having that sort of experience, like, you have professors that are there, they see the trends, they see the excitement in young people, but at the same time, they're coming from a wealth of knowledge. And by working with them, and working, let's say, with some institutions that also have, let's say, accelerator hubs, these are some of the ideas, and we really hope that some of the projects can, begin to inspire and connect with. And with this report, we hope to make it an annual event. So some of the projects that will be featured this year, it'll be amazing to sort of see some of the trends and where they go and build and scale in the years to come. So at the moment, please, check out the website. And if you know of any solutions, we encourage you to submit them. We'd love to hear from you.
Oh, okay. Thank you, Dominique. I think, do you want to address something more, or?
That was it, just on the report for now. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, thank you then, Dominique, for your words on the report and then the solutions. And I think this is like a very good initiative to accomplish and to have more young people, and people especially that are not like in very good universities or like in the middle of the discussion. We can hear, for example, to having the report people exactly from the Amazon with solutions that they think it's a very good solution, and you can address it to different areas and also replicate it. So the report has this idea to bring together this kind of thing. Thank you.
It's youthsolutions.report. And so we've highlighted a couple of the guidelines just to sort of streamline, I guess, if you have an idea. So at the moment, we're also accepting projects that are still in the initial stage. So anything you think that is remotely working towards the SDGs, please submit it. And at the same time, like any projects that are more formalized, whether you are even as far along as, say, as a registered charity or registered company, it's all on the website. So so in the guidelines, youth.
How do you define youth or youth solutions?
So between 15 to 30. So we've been getting a lot of projects as well. So even if they were started between a certain age and passed along, like let's say if you started a project when you were 28 and now you're 35, but somebody else is carrying it on, it's still the work of young people. So that would still qualify.
We have, I think Sam was going to add something, and also Professor Virgilio straight from Manaus. I'm going to open to Virgilio, then we can go to Sam. Okay?
Yeah, sure.
Gabi, now I can make my comments after everybody. So I'm just taking some notes. Yeah, yeah.
Great.
So if that's
Okay, Sam, it's on you then.
Yeah, sorry. Just wanted to add to that. When we say youth solutions, we just mean that if young people were active within a project and were critical in coming up with that project, the definition is not so strict. The criteria is not so strict on that, because in order to have creative solutions, we need to have flexible and flexible guidelines and criteria. But I think one of the major reasons we launched the report was that we would go to a lot of UN conferences time after time, and there was all this talk of solutions, but nobody ever actually cited a single solution. So we thought, instead of that, why don't we use these forums, these incredibly expensive forums where people fly all over the world, and instead of just talking and talking, instead, the people who couldn't make it but have been doing brilliant work to be able to tell their stories. Tell their stories. Minister from Ghana, this young person from Ghana is doing this fantastic work. You should support them. President of Germany, Chancellor of Germany, your young people in your country are doing this brilliant work. This is an example that we have in this report. Why don't you support them? A certain company, you want to invest in education, look what these young people are achieving with this solution for education. Why don't you work with them? So we want to play the role of a matchmaking and storyteller for this. And this is why the Youth Solutions Report, I think, is quite important in that regard. And the most important element is to be able to use it as a practical tool to get them support, to get them access to finance, to get them access to political influence and power, and in the effort of scaling these to real global solutions.
And I just have a question.
I just wish that what's the special deadline?
So at the moment, the deadline on the website says the 25th of September, but we are looking to extend that possibly to the second week of October. So that'll be updated as well. Yep.
I think in the end of the session, we will open it to Q&A. So if you are interested in, to have it, we can have more questions later. Okay. Then now we move forward to Tessa Ferraz from Engajamundo. Tessa, she's from Brazil, is graduated in International Relations in São Paulo State University, and is a special student in the master's program of the Institute of International Relations of University of São Paulo. And currently, she's member of the Sustainable Development Working Group of the Youth Association Engajamundo. Okay, Tessa, it's with you.
Hello. First of all, thank you for the invitation. Before I start, I will give an overview about Engajamundo work. We are a Brazilian youth-led organization with 120 volunteers spread out across the 5 regions of Brazil, and we currently have local committees in 16 cities. Engajamundo started at Rio Plus 20 conference, when we realized that our future and present was being decided behind closed doors, and we saw that the youth from the north was very organized and putting their demands into the discussion, and we from south didn't have any representative in these agendas and no influence in this process. So we decided to create the organization aiming to empower the Brazilian youth to comprehend and participate on national and international political process through actions of trainings, mobilizations, and activism. Oh, let me try to take this off. So starting to discuss about the key questions that we had here, I'm going to talk about the current scenarios for youth and engagement. And about that, precisely speaking about the Brazilians' current situation, I think that for the first time in our lives, the Brazilian youth is facing a critical period of social and economic and political instability and a deep crisis of representativity. We recently discovered how sensible concepts of democracy, inclusion, and guarantees of rights can be. After having a woman occupying the highest political position in the country, now we have a government with no ethnic, gender, or age diversity. The moment is also marked by the increase of conservatism, intolerance, and little appreciation for democracy. The Brazilian youth often avoids all political thematic under the false pretense of association politics to corruption. We do not see our faces reflected in those men wearing fancy suits with white hair and white skin, so we do not feel represented. Thanks. But crisis scenario, it's also a scenario for opportunity. On the other hand, we are the generation with the biggest access to information and technology. We have so many ways of connecting to each other. So it is our role to question the economic, the social, political situation, to question the development model that was delivered to us and rethink the world we live in. We are aware of the reality surround us. We are conscious in every aspect of our lives. And most important, we are considering ourselves agents of transformation of this scenario. So from digital activism to joining youth-led organizations, from voluntarism to political participation, youth engagement in every aspect is crucial to a meaningful and power transformation and to achieve the sustainable development. So the next thing I'm going to talking about is 3 fundamental things to achieve the SDGs, which is who, when, and what will be done to implement this agenda. First, who are we, the youth that we're talking about here? We need to take into consideration that we as youth are a very diverse group of individuals with so many different voices. This process must be participatory and inclusive for all of these voices to be heard, with special attention given to marginalized groups. And we, youth, must especially pay attention to that because, as strange as it may seem, not everyone has access to internet or social media. To truly leave no one behind, we must reach and hear the voices of the most vulnerable group as well. Second is about when we will implement this idea, and it's about the future we want. The participation of youth in promoting sustainability should not be restricted to only a look to the future. We should be protagonists in the urgent task of transforming the debit we received in benefits for all current and future generations. We want for our present as much as for our future a long-term sustainable development. And finally is what we want for the present and for the future. And considering the different perspectives of youth, we have the same goal and we want the same things. We want to change everything that is not currently working in our society. This means a deep structural transformation of the development model of today, including economic, political, social, and environmental aspects. So we want a complete change in every single sphere of our lives, from birth throughout our childhood and adolescence. We want an education system designed not to develop ourselves, we want an education system designed to develop ourselves as human beings and citizens, and not only focused to the labor market. We want all girls in school. We want to have access to a comprehensive sexual and reproductive health and rights education. We want to have decent jobs receiving equal salaries despite of gender and age. We do not want to be seen only as consumers, but as individuals with rights. We do not want that interest of the big corporations remain above of interest of people and nature. We do not want to be killed by gender or skin color-based violence. We want the right to decide about our own bodies. We want to live in sustainable and inclusive cities, and communities. We will not suffer from the effects of climate change. I want to emphasize that the maximum temperature rise by the end of the century should be 1.5 degrees. To finally live in the world that we want, we need a change of the current paradigm. To truly eliminate all inequalities, eradicating poverty and hunger, it is a start, but redistribute wealth and resources must be our main purpose. We must keep in mind that capitalism is a patriarchal system. We must recognize that we will never achieve peace without access to justice to all. The development and growth is necessary to attend human needs, not market ambitions. Our current development model is not sustainable at all because it is synonymous of unlimited consumption within a limited planet. I heard during these weeks around the General Assembly here in some events that it will take a revolution to achieve all of these goals in such a short period. And like a well-known sentence of the former president of Chile, Salvador Allende, being young and not being revolutionary is a biological controversy. So the sustainable development is a chain, and all of the 17 goals depend on each other to happen. But it should also be a chain of partners and actions. Agendas are mere words on paper unless action follows. Without actions, the SDGs will be just a document. And we know that signed documents on papers do not change history. People change their own history. And finally, is the most important question, that it is how to engage youth through institutions to ensure that the sustainable development goals will be achieved. So after talking about who, when, and what, we need to figure out how this will be done. And I think we need to understand that this process is about us. We need to take ownership of the SDGs, be empowered, fully participate, exercise our leadership abilities, and put them into practice. The implementation of the 2030 Agenda will not be a process marked only by the fingerprints of the governments, but also constructed with our own hands. And for that, it is necessary to bring the Sustainable Development Agenda closer to youth daily lives. We need to make information more accessible to all youth to truly make sure that no one is left behind. There is a need to make youth more aware of the SDGs, and for that, we need to speak young language. Making the SDGs accessible to youth implies simplifying the language generally used, making the communication more effective, attractive, and comprehensive. Not everyone understands United Nations acronym and jargon, and not everyone speaks English. The information about this agenda must circulate outside of UN channel medias and outside of our .org websites. When people do not know that the government signed an important document committing themselves to implement national public policies to achieve these goals, we do not only lose a huge opportunity to demand effective actions from our local stakeholders, but we also lose our opportunity to play a role as leaders in this process, rather than being mere targets in policymaking. We need to understand that our present and future are being decided behind closed doors, and we will never have the representative we want if we don't take the ownerships on the decision-making process. We are the SDGs generation, the generation who will see and perform the transformation. But it's also fundamental to bring the actions to our daily basis lives, and do not leave the discussions and implementation only in a high-level sphere. I heard many times during this week that from the leaders, the stakeholders, people occupying the highest positions, that they are expecting from us, youth, the innovative solutions to implement the SDGs, the creativity, the thinking outside of the box, the optimistic and fearless ideas in practice. If all parts involved in this process stay just waiting for the other part to take the action, we won't move. It is true that the most impactful actions are made in a high-level plan by the implementation of national policies, changing legislations, monitoring the achievements, but they won't be top-down decisions. We can perform significant change as well. So from joining a youth-led organization to even writing a tweet to the major asking him what is he doing about the SDGs agenda, from starting a group to discuss topics of feminism or women empowerment in a university, to participation of an international conference, we must be involved. This is an extremely ambitious agenda which aims to achieve big results. This idea of being involved in this process must be a little intimidating sometimes. The others, and sometimes ourselves, may tend to think that this is not our space, and change the world and the development model is not our scope. There is a sentence which is a personal motivation for me in many situations, written by a recognized Latin American writer. His name is Eduardo Galeano, he's from Uruguay, and he compares the utopia with trying to reach the horizon. So if we take 2 steps in the direction of the horizons, it will move 2 steps further. If we take 10 steps trying to reach the horizon, it will move 10 steps further. So what is the purpose of utopia? What is the purpose of trying to reach the horizon for? To make us move. Is to cause us to advance. I don't believe that achieving a sustainable development is a utopia. It cannot be. It is our only pathway. But seeing goals like zero hunger or industry innovation and infrastructure may be youth repelling because it is too big. This agenda is composed by 17 goals, 230 indicators, and 169 targets. This sums 416 things to remind. So the enormous results we may achieve in this agenda should be our motivation, our fuel, our sustainable fuel, to perform every single action we can, every effort in the direction of transforming the world into the place that we want to live. Thank you.
Thank you, Tessa. I'm suspect to say, but I'm a huge fan of Engajamundo work, and especially Raquel. And unfortunately, she's not here with us, but I think you represented very well the engagement of the Engajamundo and the work. And I truly believe that it's really important to have this kind of work open and with the participatory of youth people and from the youth engagement. And then finally, we have from CIS, which is Children's International Summer Villages. We have Rachel Elan Lee Gideon, which is an analytical chemist and have 3 daughters. And she has been involved in CIS since 1988, participating as a child and now as a parent herself. And currently she serves as risk manager for CIS's New York chapter. It's with you, Rachel.
Once.
Yes. Okay. Okay. All right. So I'm here representing CISV, it's Children's International Summer Villages. It was originally started in the 1950s, just to give you some background. There was a psychologist in Ohio, Doris Allen, and after World War II, she saw that the World War was a terrible thing, and her idea for fixing that in the future was to start with the children. She said if we start with the young children and we teach them peace, we teach them global friendship, then as they get to be adults, they won't want to have war with the other countries where their friends live. So she said, let's start with the youth. So her idea was to start with 11-year-olds. She said they're young enough that they haven't formed set opinions, but they're also old enough that we can have conversations, we can talk about ideas. And so she held the first CISV village, she called it. It was a month long. And she invited youth from 12 different countries. So they had a total of 48 youth 4 kids from 12 different countries, and they all came together for a month. And they talked about different issues in the world. They got to know each other. They made friends, and this has continued ever since the 1950s. We are now in over 90 countries. The U.S. alone has 22 chapters. I'm here from the New York chapter, although I'm originally from the Chicago chapter. I participated as an 11-year-old, and all through, they now have programs all through the teen years, and now we also have adult programs called International Peoples Project, where we take on different projects throughout the world, and it's adults all the way up to age 99 have done this. And so 2016 is our year of sustainable development. World peace was originally the goal, but we also realized that we had a platform to accomplish other things. So we've addressed conflict and resolution, and now sustainable development is our 2016 goal. And so I'd like to read a little bit of something that our youth wrote, because we thought it was important to keep the youth involved. And so we have local groups that meet, also called Junior Branch. It's for people who maybe don't travel, but even the ones who do travel, to stay in contact with all the friends that they've made. But they came up with the idea of doing something called Dig In. And here's what they've said. So the sustainable development is the broadest of CISV's 4 content areas. In truth, human rights, diversity, and conflict and resolution could all fit under the large umbrella of sustainable development. Although the approach to each theme could differ depending on what values, tools, and ideas everyone brings with them. Having such a diverse topic allows us to talk and educate about a whole lot of things, but at the same time also poses challenges. How do we make sure we're all on the same page? How do we address the issues of differing understanding of sustainability, of development, and the many different definitions? Our foremost challenge, however, is undoubtedly how to ensure our activities, programs, and education represent and communicate the spectrum of topics that make up the sustainable development content areas. With these challenges in mind, the International Junior Branches Project Dig In planned the first out of 6 scheduled educational activities to be released during 2016. And Dig In actually has, they've posted on a website, and they also have a Facebook page, but they've released, I think, 4 different activities now that anybody can do. You can do it with groups that you're in. And they address, so in the first activity, they aim to introduce the participants to core concepts of sustainable development and the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. We challenge participants' understanding of sustainability, letting them use the concept to understand and analyze a problem in our world. To wrap the activity up, we look at the Sustainable Development Goals and ask ourselves whether these represent the full spectrum and whether the achievement of these goals would be enough for human life on our planet to be sustainable. So I would encourage everybody to go look at CISV.org, see what we're doing, and see how, you know, some of the ideas that our youth have come up with could possibly spark ideas in everybody, everywhere. So, thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you for the words. And I think Professor Virgilio wants to add something, and then we can open to Q&A.
Okay, great. Excellent. Well, first of all, let me thank you all for all your remarks and very well informed, very sophisticated. I made my address very short in the beginning on purpose, because I thought that would be better for me to listen to you first and inform myself on what are the issues that you're most concerned. So for me, it was particularly very rich. So I'd like to sort of complement and do a part 2 of my thinking here. I think Sam made very clearly, you know, the urgency that we have ahead of us, how worrisome is the future. We're not here in a very good scenario. And Jim Henson's participation, as Sam mentioned a couple of days ago in New York in our meeting, was very, very strong. there's an 80% chance, 80% chance of very, very extreme scenarios by 21 or 2100. No? And this is a period, just think of it, that all of you are very likely to be alive. And your kids, very likely. Your grandkids are probably going to live. I mean, if you were 20 and say that you have a kid in 2020, your kids will be 80 by 2100. And your grandkids, suppose that they have the same life expectancy, they will be alive by 2130. So it's not something which is too far away, 2100. So there is a very urgent need for action. So I think what we need from you guys, which represent the next generation, is how you can be drivers of change of business as usual. Einstein had a say about insanity, which is to keep on doing things which are wrong. And so insanity in a climate sense is keep doing what is business as usual. So it's insane. So we have to have that message conveyed across. The problem is that there is a conflict of interest. There is short-term interest, which is, say, this generation's interest, and the long-term interest, which is the interest of your generation and the generation of your kids. So how to reconcile this is only going to be possible if you have a stronger voice. And you four, you five, actually, Gabriela is a part of this group. You five have a very important role to play, which is not only conveying this message, but being catalyst of a larger movement, a larger social movement. And in the case of the Amazon, what I'd like to suggest is setting a challenge, setting ourselves a challenge. Would it be doable to have an SDSN youth group in all major Amazonian universities by next year? And as I understand, we have youth from at least 2 Brazilian institutions, the Federal University of Amazonas, and I've been corresponding here doing this through Skype with Professor Henrique Pereira, and of UEA, on the State University of Amazonas. Should we have a strong youth group in these 2 universities? Should we have the same in other large universities in the Brazilian Amazon, and likewise in Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, and so on? Is that something doable? How can we make that happen? Could you, Sam, save yourself time to tour around this, and maybe with Gabriela and others who are in this, and help establish these youth groups, and make use of tools such as the one that we're using now for webinars that we don't require lots of money to make it happen, maybe using Facebook or Instagram as different venues to exchange. So I'd like to have this vision discussed by you guys. Is this doable? And if it's doable, maybe I can also borrow the words of one of you who said, we need to define who is going to do and when and what to make this network of youth empowered and strong and active, and exchange lessons among these youth groups. How are people being able to mobilize? I shared with you earlier the experience of this Virada Sustentável, this Sustainable Development Weekend, that was basically a zero cost, but resulted in big engagement. So I'd just like to use the remainder of this time slot that we have to ask you, how can we make this happen? Or first of all, is this a vision that we should all aspire for? And if yes, how can we make that happen?
Okay, and in this way, I guess we are open to Q&A, and I have also some questions that are related to this one from Professor Vigilio Viana. So I think I will read them, then we can have like a discussion on that. Okay? Let me just get it. Does anyone? Yes, go ahead.
Hi, sorry, I don't know your name. You were just speaking on Skype. So I spoke earlier when I mentioned that I, for the last 5 years, have identified and worked on a case with the International Criminal Court that brings the Rome Statute to life to fight environmental destruction, which when we speak about the Amazon, there are tribes and ecosystems all across the Amazon that are being destroyed. So we can think of beautiful solutions, but unless we stop the harm, then that ecosystem is being devastated astronomically, and tribes that I represent are being exterminated in the next 10 years through gross contamination of their ecosystem. So you speak beautifully, but when I told you that for the last 5 years, I identified a law that no one else was using and said this could single-handedly stop climate change, your answer was, can you stop talking? We need to move on. And so I want to challenge you that if we can't use a law that stops people who are doing billion-dollar contracts from gross destruction, there's no other way to stop them. They want their money, they want their development, they want their resources. So I'm curious as to why you speak beautifully, but you weren't even interested in that development. Last week on Thursday, the International Criminal Court formally announced that my argument is valid. I have a case to stop the Belamonte Dam, which has been with the court since 2013. I represent the Shuar people in Ecuador whose homes were bulldozed down this week, all through this month. They've been completely destroyed. All of Ecuador is being sold off in plots right now for development. Same with Bolivia, all the national parks. Right through Brazil, there's plans, 20 dams that you spoke of, and this is a legal case that is against the Belamonte Dam. It has the power right now. That court has the power to stop the dam. Why were you not more interested? And why wouldn't this be central to protecting the Amazon first?
Well, first of all, I didn't stop speaking last time. I just wanted to make the statement turned into a specific question, because that was what we had asked participants to make. So I'm sorry if you misunderstood. The specific case you're talking about, I don't know the details of it. You mentioned a specific law suit, so I don't know the details of it, so it's hard to make a comment on this. I can only say that in the case of Brazil, there are a number of legal suits against the Belamonte Dam, which have done a number of interesting things in terms of requiring changes and so on. The dam is already up and running, so in a case it's now in a way it's too late, because the dam is already built in the case of Belamonte. But there are other dams being discussed, so I think legal suits play a very important role. In the case of Brazil, in the legal system, we have something called the Ministério Público, which is the public attorney, which has been very effective in changing projects and in making gains for indigenous people. So I think the legal system is in some ways working. And recently there was a very important victory in the Tapajós River, where there was a new Belamonte type dam being planned, and that was cancelled effectively. That was done through the Brazilian court system and the Brazilian legal system. So I'm all in favor of using the legal system to defend indigenous people's rights and prevent bad projects from taking place.
I'm gonna follow. I already have 4 questions. Then I can open again because they were in the beginning. Okay, then we can come back. Okay, this is addressed to Engajamundo and also SDSN Youth. What is the strategy of Engajamundo and SDSN Youth to involve youths from the remote Amazon livelihoods of the most hit by climate change? So if you can address something on that. Also, I have one from Victor Salviati to address it to Sam. And he's asking, in some areas in the globe, communication is a key challenge. In the Amazon, we work with people who don't have either internet or phone connectivity. Therefore, in addition to social media engagement, how is DSN Global thinks to engage this off-grid youth population? And then we have here from all of us that are on the round table. Brazil is an international reference considering the Millennium Agenda, but the SDGs is a lot boldness for the country, especially because it still face challenges as hungry, education, and traditional people involved. How everybody in the table how is the strategy that might be done for implementation within the Amazonian region to address those questions? And then later we can come back to opening questions from the audience.
So regarding the first questions of how can we make the most vulnerable groups included in this agenda, I guess, first of all, is to make people aware of it. I don't know about you, but I had a hard time trying to explain to my family and friends what I was coming to do here this week. People don't know what the SDGs are. So imagine in a remote area, in Amazon area. So to give an example of a work done by Engajamundo, we have some activities of formation, which is we go to a certain space, a public space, and we try to explain to them using youth language what this agenda is about and how can people be involved and what people want for their lives. I guess the moment of deciding the SDGs are already passed. So now we need to think about the implementation. So how to make the most vulnerable groups participation of this? First is to give information.
Yeah, so thank you for those wonderful questions, and they're all really important. So with the first one, in terms of the strategy for SDSN Youth in doing this, is the fact that we have an SDSN Youth in Amazonia. And having a local group, I think, is very important because these circumstances and the scenarios and the local context by SDSN in Amazonia you guys are much better informed than I am, and that's what's the strength of the SDSN network globally, because through local action and identifying local ways. And one of the things that we do is we want to work with local youth groups, such as Engajamundo, because we understand that we don't have the expertise, but we can bring the stakeholders who have been doing this for a long time, like you guys, together to increase impact, to compare strategies, to work together, to switch resources, to give tools. And again, of course, it goes back to education for sustainable development, ESD, which is a very important component. Being able to teach children in school about the SDGs, but we understand that some children in some areas are not. So in those scenarios, we need to rely and work directly with small or big organizations within that context. But more importantly, I think in terms of really engaging youth, and that's a key theme here from the region, especially youth in remote regions. I think one thing you must understand is that a young person needs purpose. Without purpose, they're not going to feel engaged in this process. We can communicate the goals and tell them what they are. But if they don't feel like that goal matters to them and they have a role to play within that goal, doesn't matter how many times you tell them, they're not going to be interested. How does that goal affect their life? What is their contribution to that goal? Then you're not going to get them on your side. To get them, you need to go into identify a role for them and give them a purpose. That's when you'll start to see achievement. How to give that purpose? It's different around the world for different young people. But to give them projects, let them take ownership of the projects, involve them in campaigns and activism, and let them lead. So I think those are some of the ways, but of course different organizations have lots of different ways of doing it. And this is why SDSN Youth is a global network, in order to be working with local organizations and hear from local organizations and give the mandate to the local organizations to get this stuff done. And we try to provide support, like the Youth Solutions Report. We have a membership process. Our membership is not for individuals, it's for organizations around the world. And that's how we want to do. And it also goes back to Virgilia's question of what you asked, whether it's a possibility of having SDSN Youth within, expand within the Amazonia region and to have it at every single campus in that region. Absolutely, absolutely. We've seen it basically almost be done in other places, and the enthusiasm and the fantastic work that I've already seen here from young people in Brazil and the rest of the Amazon basin region, I don't see why that wouldn't be possible. With the right support mechanisms, with the willingness, absolutely, it is possible. And to answer Victor's question about communication, this is one area the UN always gets wrong. It's just bad at communications. It's not out of malicious intent, it's just they don't have the resources or the capacity, and sometimes it just doesn't come across. But communications always in policy is seen as an add-on. We create the policy and then we add a communication element. We create it, then we communicate it. I don't think that's the case for this agenda. It's not just an add-on. It is the core of the agenda. The SDGs are a set of goals to bring people together. That's communication. It's fundamental. It's not an add-on. It's not you design it, then you go out and try to promote it. So if we really want to reach people, we're going to have to see communication and getting, leave no one behind and all that. If we're serious about that, we got to see communication as a core component, not a side component. And that includes reaching every single person on this planet and getting them to buy into the process. In particular, people who are most affected off-grid. And one way for that is to find ways to communicate with them, not to just hear their voice. I mean, hearing their voice is one thing. You can hear someone's voice and just not listen. Hear their voice, listen to it, and then tell their stories. Tell their stories at these conferences that we always attend. Tell their stories. They can't be here, they don't have access, but whoever has had that opportunity, come here and tell the world what you've seen. I think that's when you start to have a bit of a culture change within these conferences and at the UN. And again, it goes to the core of what you said. I will probably come back to implementation. I'll allow others to speak as well.
Oh, anyone? They have a question, right?
They've done studies where you have 17 different types of a product to buy versus 3 types of products. And there's more sales of the 3 types of products than the 17. When you talked about 400 different things to try to communicate to the people of your region, it seems like if you want to get cooperation of all the different countries in the region, can you just pick 3 or 5 and take those 3 or 5 and then bring them out to the world? Because if the Amazon rainforest is super important, the ignorance of most people in the rest of the world, the youths, they just don't even know what the top 3 things are that you're most concerned about. And if you can leverage that concern with a group like yours, which has 90 different chapters, or 90 different countries, and I don't know how many chapters and how many people you can reach, and you can educate and get your group empowered, then all of a sudden those 3 or 5 things actually can make a difference. Whereas if you take 400, you're not going to make any difference. So maybe you guys can talk and come up with something that you can then put out to your group and actually get something done and take action versus words. Because, you know, it's great to know all 400, but what are the 2 or 3 things that you'd want to get that we don't know about? You know, we really don't know. So I just want to put that out there and see what you guys think about it.
When I meant the 416 things to remember, was to emphasize that these numbers, all these goals, all these words, this jargons from United Nations might be a little bit scary for us and youth repeller, as I said. So I think you're right. I think that maybe we should focus on the points that make more sense to our realities. I think that the goals that has more targets and indications regarding youth are 4, 5, and 8, education, gender empowerment, and employment. So I think this is different for each region. Probably a young person living in the Amazon area has different things that they want priority. So, and I don't know, maybe focusing too much in only a few topics, we will not achieve the whole project. And all the goals, they talk to each other, they implement each other, they need each other to happen. So, well, that's it.
Yep. Just an answer to your question. I think you've indicated a frustration with the goals, which is that there are 17 of them and there are 169 targets, and I believe 200 plus indicators. Again, it makes it very difficult to remember and communicate. But you have to understand, these are not perfect. The goals are not perfect. They came as a result of intergovernmental negotiations. And the reason, I mean, the MDGs were 8, which made them easier to communicate, but 17 can be difficult, but at least we have them there. And at least countries fought for them to have their part in it, which I understand is not the perfect scenario, but at least it's a good scenario to begin with. And in terms of the priorities for the Amazon basin and the Amazon region, I think it's going to be quite different depending on the area, I'm sure, as you mentioned. And what we must understand that a lot of the goals are interlinked. So it's hard to identify just the top 3 priorities. I think it should be done, but as long as the top 3 priorities do not take away from the other goals, because impact in one goal leads to impact in another goal. I mean, look at the poverty goal. That goes to the core of it. The education goal, again, has an impact on all of them. The health goal, again, same here. Forest, but perhaps ocean, not so important, not so directly. But then peace and justice, with all the other things that we've been talking about, are all very important. So it depends, I think.
Just trying to come up with a commonality that the different regions can come and rally around and create at least a general purpose that can be spread out to the rest of the world, so we actually know your problems.
Yeah, I mean, just that's the right thinking. I'm just saying that as long as we make sure that just because we have identified those 3 goals, we don't ignore the rest of them, if you know what I mean, because they're a very interlinked agenda, and we need to think of a very comprehensive approach. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Just mentioned that we received a message from the Federal University of Amazonas, and they are broadcasting it to a lot of students that attended a huge event regarding environmental science until yesterday. And today is like an open event to them, and they are very engaged and happy to be participating. And also now I have another question from the chat from the YouTube. It's from Beatriz. Starling is really a way of engaging youth people, talking in their language about Amazon, SDGs, climate change. It is essential to incorporate those issues into young people daily lives. And she's asking about how can you comment on that?
Sorry, could you? I didn't understand the first 3 or 4 words.
Yeah, I mean,
of the
it
question.
was wait, it's just because it's a little bit far.
Didn't catch that.
Starling, do you want me to repeat it again?
Just the first one.
Okay. Starling is really a way of engaging young people. Talk in their language about Amazon, SDGs, climate change. Is it essential to incorporate these issues into young people's daily lives? And what is your comment on that?
Thanks. I don't want to dominate the panel. Want to make sure I gave the women on the panel an opportunity as well. But yes, absolutely. We cannot talk to those young people in UN jargon. Absolutely. We must ensure that the issues that we're talking about, they can relate to. It's not just going out there and saying, well, the indicator and, the process and these big UN jargons, throw them in there and expect them to really be inspired by that. I don't feel inspired by that. I don't know how they will be. So we need to speak their language and about their issues, and to really look at the localization of the SDGs. This is a global agenda. If we wanted to succeed, again, we have to find a way for them to relate to what we're talking about. And that's with every human being. I mean, it's not just young people. This is the case across the board. So I think, yeah, absolutely. It's a fundamental question. Thank you for asking it.
Sorry. In Engajamundo, we have a way of working which is sexify the SDGs, which is making this more attractive to people. So I think sometimes we look at this process with the UN logo and we think that this is not for us. I should not be involved in this. But people are actually doing things about it. I'm pretty sure that a young group of girls who get together in a university to talk about feminism and gender empowerment, they are talking the same things that is described in here. A community who gets together to talk about better education quality, better, I don't know, a change in the education system, is they want the same things that are listed here under the UN goal. So it's very easy that youth get engaged with this agenda because it is talking about us. I see myself reflected in all these goals here. So we only need to give information to these people that there is an agenda and that your government signed this, so you can request, you can demand for them effective actions. But people already want this for their lives, despite of this document that 193 nations signed it. So that's it.
I think getting to the core of like the Youth Solutions Report, yes, as humans, it's just naturally to want to tell stories, to share these things. And in the case of goals, the whole idea with being global goals, global issues, one story, a project, let's say, that you want to share is something that can be done just as easily somewhere else. But if nobody shows you that, how would you ever know? And so this is why putting, let's say, things together in a report or broadcasting them online or talking to you, sharing them with people every day, it just brings that idea home. Forget the idea that there's all these policies, there's all this policy in place, there's all this structure, etc. it's just the storytelling. This is something exciting that I'm doing back home. Okay, it's something in the Caribbean. It could just as easily be done out in the Pacific. By putting those ideas out there, you can just sort of connect and make those connections. You know, oceans work here is the same as oceans work somewhere else. And you know, by putting them out there and connecting people with the right people, you can sort of see some of the gaps and the challenges. But at the same time, maybe that is also broad. Gives you the platform then to connect with other people and co-create, collaborate, and solve these issues.
Great, thank you, Dominique. Thank you all. We still have 2 more questions, and we also have like 5 minutes to finish it up. So I'm gonna open it, and we can come back to guys. Okay.
Hi, my name is Ricardo Lozano from Colombia, from People on Earth Institution of Colombia. And I have just a little question. Is that to say that I'm totally agree that when you say that we have the local community has their own priority, a specific priority in order to reduce the climate change effect, but also we know that the all economic models is affecting our ecosystem, vulnerable ecosystem area, and also that the taking account that all economic activities is increasing the desertification in our ecosystem. That I'm wondering that if the new generation, the new people that now you have the power in order to change that all activities, are you asking yourself what is the new purpose for you, for example, for Brazilian young people, that in order to change or to looking for the new economic model for this specific and vulnerable ecosystem, or people from Colombia or Peru or Ecuador, I don't know. Thanks.
I can go. Yeah, sure. Firstly, I'm not Brazilian or from Latin America, but yes. I'm from Australia. Yeah. So
from
I'm
Australia.
from an outside perspective. Yeah, I'm from an outside perspective. But absolutely, economic models, they are not working.
Yeah.
And they haven't been working for a while. But there are interests at play. They keep pushing them and pushing them. And the people who suffer the results are ordinary people and young people. Before I think you came in, I mentioned that Oxfam did this research that there were 35 individuals had as much wealth as the bottom 3.5 billion people. I mean, how can you call that a sound economic policy? If we want to achieve these goals, our economic policy has to change. There's no other way. We can't do it within this system. I don't know what the economic system is going to look like. If I said I did, I would be lying. But I know, just because we don't right now have the best alternative and we don't have all the details and but we have a direction. And I think the goals give us at least a direction. And I am counting, not on myself, but I'm counting on others, young people who are way more creative than I am, who are way more smarter than I am, and who are way more talented than I am, to hopefully come up with a new system.
Yes, because I think that the young people also is taking the all activities, the all models, the same one, the same economic activities, and continue with the problems, and continue with it, and also increasing the problem. So I think that the young people, the young community, they don't need any tool different than the change that we were doing wrong before.
And going back to what Virgilio said is, what, again, I said it before, Einstein said that you cannot solve problems with the same thinking that started them. So, of course, we're going to need new ways of looking at this to achieve the goals. Otherwise, we're not serious about it. So I hope this can happen.
We have one more there that was open already. Then I think we have to wrap up everything because we are out of time, but we can discuss a little bit when we end the event.
Cool.
Okay.
I was actually inspired by your question about the 17 goals being, maybe too many. And Sam, you spoke about how communication is extremely important. And Tessa, you were saying that maybe for young people, we should focus on 4, 5, 6, and 8, the goals. And that maybe narrowing in on goals would be a bit more powerful for achieving them. I'm kind of in disagreement with that. I don't think that learning 17 goals is too hard. If communication is really important, then maybe we should start thinking about communicating the goals in a different way. 17, I think Elvis actually had 17 number one songs, on the charts, and everyone remembers his lyrics, everyone remembers his songs. So Tessa, what would you think about having like communication done for the Sustainable Development Goals done in a not so traditional way, like not through conferences and forums like this, but in a more day-to-day manner that everyday people who listen to Elvis's songs and made him get 17 number one songs will be able to relate to?
Well, I guess, I don't know, everyone here knows your community and knows what will work to reach the people that you want to reach. I think we have to try. I came here to this UN week expecting from the leaders, from the stakeholders, to give me a step-by-step of what to do, of what to implement things. And I guess I'm coming home with more doubts than guarantees because, like someone said before here, anyone has a direction, a precise plan of what to do. We have to try, but we have to try considering that we do not have much time to errors and to see what's going to work because we only have got 14 years to achieve all of these plans. So I don't know, we have to think outside the box, see what are the tools that we have in our hands, what will work better for our communities, our realities, and don't be afraid, do it. If you have an idea, if you want to transform the SDGs, I don't know, language into music, I don't know, just do it. We have to take the ownership of this process. We have to just do it, to take action.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting you raised that question because just the other day I was speaking to a lady from Arkansas and she was saying, how do I even go about talking about SDGs, in my state? Nobody knows what they are. Do we go at it on a school level? Do we put it in a curriculum? But how do you talk to the everyday person on the street? She said, so her idea, she was saying, was to just ditch the idea of, like you had said, with maybe promoting them as just a UN agenda, because it's just, there's sometimes that disconnect, so she was going to rebrand the goals in her own way and sort of make them state goals. Okay, and so that kind of goes to your point, what are the 3 priorities, or what are the key issues, let's say in my state, in my county, that we need to focus on. And then, because that puts it at a more personal level, and when you have people that are getting excited about certain topics and themes, then whether it's just a few focus areas in another state, it could be somewhere else. You're still working then towards creating sustainability, driving education, all these sort of factors. So I think, it's a case-to-case basis and finding ways to personalize them however they are. It's kind of a blend between the two, I think. Yeah.
Just one quick comment is I absolutely believe fundamentally in the power of music and art in promoting this agenda and in communicating. Again, it's an emotional thing. We need people to feel inspired to take action, people to understand it, people to relate to it. And I think art, music, culture, poetry, drawings, painting, these things are fundamental in communicating the agenda. And like you said, we need to rethink the old communication models and come up with new ways of communicating this through inspiration. I think we can do that. I think a lot of young people are very interested in promoting it through this mechanism. I think we should absolutely encourage that.
And I think in all this way, we can maybe discuss as next steps of this agenda and of this event, talk a little bit about next year's event, like the Sustainable Weekend. Maybe we can have like a huge event engaging people in the Amazon region to you all guys like face their reality and face how exactly is the region, and I don't know, discuss next steps, discuss like a conjoint agenda between like SDSN, Engajamundo, CIS, and other institutions that are already working on this issue in the region. And I think to wrap up and end our event, I'd like to invite Professor Virgilio Viana to summarize it and give us some words.
Okay, well, thank you, Gabi. I think it was great to listen from you all guys. And I think setting that vision, Gabi, would be great. So let's shoot for next July. There'll be the Sustainable Development Weekend in Manaus. There'll be thousands of people, as Sam said, with arts, music, all kinds of things. And it would be great if we could have SDSN youth from all Amazonian countries discuss a simple vision. What is the Amazon we want for 2030? What is it? So if we could have that, each delegation from each country bringing a document which says, well, this is the Amazon we want for 2030. And then you all meet here in Manaus, and then you can produce a single document, which is a combination of all these different views. And this could be presented as the vision of the Amazon youth. And this could be a product of the Sustainable Development Weekend, the Virada Sustentável of next year. I think that would be great. And I'd like to say that we can support that to the extent that we have resources and we have a strong will to make that happen. So on that, I'd like to thank you all once again for your commitment, for your engagement in your leadership.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here with us.